Hi, and welcome back to Beans and Bezels. A few months ago, I reviewed a friend's visitor linden, and that watch was a very pleasant surprise. It managed to do something entirely out of the ordinary without borrowing any design ideas or parts from existing watches. Putting creative design aside, that watch also impressed me with the quality of finishing and attention to detail and quickly made Visitor a microbrand I could recommend to friends and subscribers. That same friend recently purchased the Duneshore Shallows and was kind enough to have this watch shipped to me first before making its way to him. This is Visitor's take on a dive watch and is quite spectacular. This watch retails at around $750 on the rubber strap and $850 on the metal bracelet. And before I show you why, I'll just say that I think it's worth the money and then some. But with any watch that hasn't been designed by committee, you're going to get polarized opinions from watch enthusiasts, and more so because this design is very much out there. This watch isn't something I would wear as an everyday watch, but is something I would buy as a collector, as it is truly special. Let's check it out. I measured the case to be 43.5 millimeters from left to right, 50.5 millimeters from lug to lug, and 14.35 millimeters in height, measured at the center, but 15.35 millimeters measured at its tallest points given the concave case back. The case is made entirely out of stainless steel and the design is highly unusual but also extraordinary. I can't think of what could have inspired such a creative and otherworldly design, but perhaps psychedelics were involved, or aliens, or both. Whatever the medium, the result is a collage of symmetric surfaces and unexpected angles that come together beautifully. To finish something like this requires a lot of extra work, and the quality of finishing is quite impressive for the money. Hats off to both Phil and his manufacturer. The case naturally and gradually extends into a pair of small lugs that have drilled through holes for easy strap changes. The lug design works well with the case, and the intricate detailing to achieve this transition is not lost to me. Brilliant stuff here. The lug width is 22 millimeters. A cylindrical and polished case section protrudes out of what you would call the mid case, and is topped with a bezel that extends outwards with sharp but thoughtfully designed bezel teeth. The bezel is easy to grip and operate, and the bezel action is excellent. There isn't any backplay, and the 120 click unidirectional dive bezel has just the right amount of friction and tactile feedback. The bezel is convex and has a 20-minute dive time indicator that uses painted Arabic numerals and Lume dots for markers. The rest of the markers are painted ticks and teardrop inserts with polished borders that are very generously filled with Lume. There is a 6.4mm screw-down crown at the 3 o'clock position that is easy to grip and operate. It is perhaps the most normal-looking element of this watch, lacks a sign top, and is well integrated with no crown or stem wobble. Flipping it over, you have a very interesting case back that is screwed into the case by means of 4 screws. The case back is concave and protrudes out on 2 sides, with a wonderful embossed design in the center. I can't say I've ever seen anything like this before, and it looks quite spectacular. These watches are rated for up to 200 meters of water resistance. This is the iron jade dial color and looks quite stunning in person. The color is very complex but works well with the case and dial design. The dial has a lot in common with the Visitor Linden that I reviewed a few months ago, so I wouldn't go into too much details here. The outer minute track, indices, dial crosshair, and logo are identical to the Linden. I will say that all these elements are impeccably executed and the finishing on this dial is very impressive. And this being my second Visitor watch makes it easy for me to say that this brand is serious about the finer details and their quality control is worthy of recognition. The handset is a bit different this time around, and I think I like this one better. The hour hand is the same with a shorter fountain pen nib design that has a large circular loomed element and a smaller circular loomed element at the tip. The minute hand is the star of the show though, with a massive loomed section and a more familiar nib design. Both hands are well finished, and while these proportions may seem a bit extreme, they're quite easy to read. Additionally, the seconds hand also has a circular loomed element here, which goes to show the more utilitarian nature of this dive watch over the dressier Linden dial design. Overall, I do prefer this dial to the Linden. I think the handset is easier to read, the lack of a date window is very appealing to me, and the color of this dial is just great. But most importantly, the dial finishing and quality control is unlike most watches I review in this price range, and if this was my watch, I would be very, very pleased. The lume on this watch is excellent, with a terrific design and a generous amount of lume material, resulting in good brightness and longevity. The numerals on the bezel are not loomed, but the teardrop-shaped inserts and the circular minute markers are loomed, and generously so. I particularly love the loomed minute markers on the dial, and I think it makes this watch look incredible and also easier to read. The hands are very well loomed and the indices are good too. The seconds hand has a small circular loomed element, which results in every single visual timekeeping element being loomed on this watch. Nobody can fault this one for performance or legibility. This watch ships with a beads of rice style mesh bracelet, and each individual bead is slightly tapered and resembles the teardrop theme on the case and dial. This is quite an impressive amount of detail to go into on a $100 bracelet. The bracelet does not taper and is roughly 21.25 millimeters wide. The buckle itself is 31 millimeters wide and has the brand's logo embossed on the top surface and has a butterfly style fold out mechanism. I didn't size this one since I wanted Neil to do the honors himself, but it appears to be fairly comfortable in terms of articulation. This is an $850 watch that is most certainly able and willing to compete with watches twice its price tag, but to me the movement gives it away and grounds the overall watch in the sub $1,000 reality that limits any Miyota 9 series equipped watch. That's not to say that this is a bad movement. It's a good movement and maintains good timing accuracy and is easy to have repaired or serviced, but the loudly spinning rotor is a frequent reminder that you have a Miyota 9039 in there, and it takes away from an otherwise incredible watch experience. If this watch had a Sellita SW200 or maybe even a Sellita SW300 movement, I think this watch could cross the $1,000 barricade with ease and still be a ton of value. On my time grapher, I observe roughly plus 5 seconds per day in the dial up position and plus 2 seconds per day in the crown up position. So pretty good regulation on this unit too. The 43.5mm case width and 50.5mm lug to lug width is on the larger side of what I find to be appropriate for my modest 6 1/4 inch wrists. I think you'd need a wrist size of at least 6.75 inches to pull off this beastly design. The overall 15.35mm height shouldn't put you off though, since the height at the center of this watch is about 14.35mm thanks to the concave case pack, which also does its part in adding to the overall comfort. I will say that this watch is a lot more comfortable than it looks, even on my relatively small wrists. And with slightly larger wrists, you will have an excellent wrist experience. And oh boy, this watch does make a statement. I wore it on the rubber strap throughout my review, and as a self-proclaimed rubber strap connoisseur, this one gets my approval. And that extravagant buckle makes it well worth the money. I'll wrap this up quickly. If you find this design exciting, just go ahead and buy it. I think you're buying into an excellent brand with a very distinctive aesthetic and a creative process that is perhaps only explained by measured amounts of psychedelics, alien encounters, and maybe fountain pens too. I love everything that this brand is doing, and creativity like this must be celebrated and supported. And this watch does not just stop at the design. The build quality, dial execution, quality control, and overall attention to detail is on par with what you would expect from watches twice its price. So if this design is calling out to you, I suggest that you give in. And if Phil decides to cater more specifically to the smaller wristed among us, you can be sure that I will pick one up too. As always, thanks for watching, and don't forget to read my other reviews in the link below.